In mathematics, a negative number is a real number that is less than 0. Negative numbers represent opposites. If positive represents movement to the right, negative represents movement to the left. If positive represents above sea level, then negative represents below level. If positive represents a deposit, negative represents a withdrawal. They are often used to represent the magnitude of a loss or deficiency. A debt that is owed may be thought of as a negative asset. A decrease in some quantity may be thought of as a negative increase. If a quantity may have either of two opposite senses, then one may choose to distinguish between those senses, perhaps arbitrarily, as positive and negative. In the medical context of fighting a tumor, an expansion could be thought of as a negative shrinkage. Negative numbers are used to describe values on a scale that goes below 0, such as the Celsius and Fahrenheit scales for temperature. The laws of arithmetic for negative numbers ensure that the common-sense idea of an opposite is reflected in arithmetic. For example, minus 3 equals 3 because the opposite of an opposite is the original thing. Negative numbers are usually written with a minus sign in front. For example, minus 3 represents a negative quantity with a magnitude of 3, and is pronounced minus 3, or negative 3, to help tell the difference between a subtraction operation and a negative number. Occasionally the negative sign is placed slightly higher than the minus sign. Conversely, a number that is greater than 0 is called positive. 0 is usually thought of as neither positive nor negative. The positivity of a number may be emphasized by placing a plus sign before it, e.g., plus 3. In general, the negativity or positivity of a number is referred to as its sign. Every real number other than 0 is either positive or negative. The positive whole numbers are referred to as natural numbers, while the positive and negative whole numbers are referred to as integers. In bookkeeping, amounts owed are often represented by red numbers, or a number in parentheses, as an alternative notation to represent negative numbers. Negative numbers appeared for the first time in history in the 9 chapters on the mathematical art, which in its present form dates from the period of the Chinese Han Dynasty, but may well contain much older material. Liu Hui established rules for adding and subtracting negative numbers. By the 7th century, Indian mathematicians such as Brahmagupta were describing the use of negative numbers. Islamic mathematicians further developed the rules of subtracting and multiplying negative numbers and solved problems with negative coefficients. Western mathematicians accepted the idea of negative numbers by the 17th century. Prior to the concept of negative numbers, mathematicians such as Diophantos considered negative solutions to problems false, and equations requiring negative solutions were described as absurd. Introduction. As the result of subtraction, negative numbers can be thought of as resulting from the subtraction of a larger number from a smaller. For example, negative 3 is the result of subtracting 3 from 0. 0 minus 3 equals minus 3. In general, the subtraction of a larger number from a smaller yields a negative result, with the magnitude of the result being the difference between the two numbers. For example, 5 minus 8 equals minus 3 since 8 minus 5 equals 3. The number line, the relationship between negative numbers, positive numbers, and 0 is often expressed in the form of a number line. Numbers appearing farther to the right on this line are greater, while numbers appearing farther to the left are less. Thus 0 appears in the middle, with the positive numbers to the right and the negative numbers to the left. Note that a negative number with greater magnitude is considered less. For example, even though 8 is greater than 5, written 8 greater than 5, negative 8 is considered to be less than negative 5, minus 8 less than minus 5. Therefore, any negative number is less than any positive number, so minus 8 less than 5 and minus 5 less than 8. Signed numbers in the context of negative numbers. A number that is greater than 0 is referred to as positive. Thus every real number other than 0 is either positive or negative, while 0 itself is not considered to have a sign. Positive numbers are sometimes written with a plus sign in front, e.g., +3 denotes a positive 3. Because 0 is neither positive nor negative, the term non-negative is sometimes used to refer to a number that is either positive or 0, while non-positive is used to refer to a number that is either negative or 0. 0 is a neutral number. Everyday uses of negative numbers. Plus-minus differential in ice hockey. The difference in total goals scored for the team and against the team when a particular player is on the ice is the player's plus-minus rating. Players can have a negative rating. British football clubs are deducted points if they enter administration, and thus have a negative points total until they have earned at least that many points that season. Lap times in Formula: the first of may be given as the difference compared to a previous lap, and will be positive if slower and negative if faster. In some athletics events, such as sprint races, the hurdles, the triple jump and the long jump, the wind assistance is measured and recorded, and is positive for a tailwind and negative for a headwind. Science: temperatures which are colder than 0 degrees Celsius or 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Latitudes south of the equator and longitudes west of the prime meridian. Topographical features of the Earth's surface are given the height above sea level, which can be negative. Electrical circuits. When a battery is connected in reverse polarity, the voltage applied is said to be the opposite of its rated voltage. For example, a 6 battery connected in reverse applies a voltage of -6. Ions have a positive or negative electrical charge. Impedance of an AM broadcast tower used in multi-tower directional antenna arrays can have a positive or negative impedance. Finance: bank account balances which are overdrawn. Refunds to a credit card or debit card are a negative debit. A company might make a negative annual profit. The annual percentage growth in a country's GDP might be negative, which is one indicator of being in a recession. Occasionally, a rate of inflation may be negative, indicating a fall in average prices. The daily change in a share price or stock market index, such as the FTSE 100 or the Dow Jones. A negative number in financing is synonymous with debt and deficit, which are also known as being in the red. Interest rates can be negative when the lender is charged to deposit their money. Other than numbering of stories in a building below the ground floor. When playing in audio on a portable media player, such as an iPod, the screen display may show the time remaining as a negative number, which increases up to 0 at the same rate as the time already played increases from 0. Television game shows. Participants on Chi often finish with a negative points score. Teams on University Challenge have a negative score if their first answers are incorrect and interrupt the question. Jeopardy! has a negative money score. Contestants play for an amount of money, and any incorrect answer that costs them more than what they have now can result in a negative score. The change in support for a political party between elections, known as swing, a politician's approval rating. In video games, a negative number indicates loss of life, damage, a score penalty, or consumption of a resource. Depending on the genre of the simulation, employees with flexible working hours may have a negative balance on their timesheet if they've worked fewer total hours than contracted to that point. Employees may be able to take more than their annual holiday allowance in a year, and carry forward a negative balance to the next year. Transposing notes on an electronic keyboard are shown on the display with positive numbers for increases and negative numbers for decreases, e.g., -1 for 1 semitone down. Arithmetic involving negative numbers. The minus sign, minus, signifies the operator for both the binary operation of subtraction and the unary operation of negation. A special case of unary negation occurs when it operates on a positive number, in which case the result is a negative number. The ambiguity of the minus symbol does not generally lead to ambiguity in arithmetical expressions, because the order of operations makes only one interpretation or the other possible for each minus. However, it can lead to confusion and be difficult for a person to understand an expression when operator symbols appear adjacent to one another. A solution can be to parenthesize the unary minus along with its operand. For example, the expression 7 plus minus the 5th of may be clearer if written 7 plus. The subtraction expression 7 to 5 is a different expression that doesn't represent the same operations, but it evaluates to the same result. Sometimes in elementary schools a number may be prefixed by a superscript minus sign or plus sign to explicitly distinguish negative and positive numbers, as in -2 plus -5 gives -7. Addition of two negative numbers is very similar to addition of two positive numbers. For example, plus equals -8. The idea is that two debts can be combined into a single debt of greater magnitude. When adding together a mixture of positive and negative numbers, one can think of the negative numbers as positive quantities being subtracted. For example, 8 plus equals 8 minus 3 equals 5 and plus 7 equals 7 minus 2 equals 5. In the first example, a credit of 8 is combined with a debt of 3, which yields a total credit of 5. If the negative number has greater magnitude, then the result is negative. Plus 3 equals 3 minus 8 equals -5 and 2 plus equals 2 minus 7 equals -5. Here the credit is less than the debt, so the net result is a debt. Subtraction. As discussed above, it is possible for the subtraction of two non-negative numbers to yield a negative answer. 5 minus 8 equals -3. In general, subtraction of a positive number is the same thing as addition of a negative. Thus 5 minus 8 equals 5 plus equals -3 and -5 equals plus equals -8. On the other hand, subtracting a negative number is the same as adding a positive. Thus 3 minus equals 3 plus 5 equals 8 and minus equals plus 8 equals 3. Multiplication. When multiplying numbers, the magnitude of the product is always just the product of the two magnitudes. The sign of the product is determined by the following rules. The product of one positive number and one negative number is negative. The product of two negative numbers is positive. Thus times 3 equals -6 and times equals 6. The reason behind the first example is simple. Adding 3 minus 2's together yields -6. Times 3 equals plus equals -6. The reasoning behind the second example is more complicated. The idea again is that losing a debt is the same thing as gaining a credit. In this case, losing two debts of 3 each is the same as gaining a credit of 6. Times equals plus 6 credit. The convention that a product of two negative numbers is positive is also necessary for multiplication to follow the distributive law. In this case, we know that times plus 2 times equals 0 times equals 0. Since 2 times equals -6, the product times must equal 6. These rules lead to another rule. The sign of any product A times B depends on the sign of A as follows. If A is positive, then the sign of A times B is the same as the sign of B, and if A is negative, then the sign of A times B is the opposite of the sign of B. The justification for why the product of two negative numbers is a positive number can be observed in the analysis of complex numbers. Division. The sign rules for division are the same as for multiplication. For example, 8 divided by equals -4, divided by 2 equals -4, and divided by equals 4. If dividend and divisor have the same sign, the result is always positive. Negation. The negative version of a positive number is referred to as its negation. For example, -3 is the negation of the positive number 3. The sum of a number and its negation is equal to 0. 3 plus equals 0. That is, the negation of a positive number is the additive inverse of the number. Using algebra, we may write this principle as an algebraic identity. X plus equals 0. This identity holds for any positive number x. It can be made to hold for all real numbers by extending the definition of negation to include zero and negative numbers. Specifically, the negation of 0 is 0, and the negation of a negative number is the corresponding positive number. For example, the negation of -3 is +3. In general, minus equals x. The absolute value of a number is the non-negative number with the same magnitude. For example, the absolute value of -3 and the absolute value of 3 are both equal to 3, and the absolute value of 0 is 0. Formal construction of negative integers. In a similar manner to rational numbers, we can extend the natural numbers n to the integers z by defining integers as an ordered pair of natural numbers. We can extend addition and multiplication to these pairs with the following rules. Plus equals times equals. We define an equivalence relation tilde upon these pairs with the following rule. Tilde if and only if a plus d equals b plus c. This equivalence relation is compatible with the addition and multiplication defined above, and we may define z to be the quotient set n squared, tilde, i.e., we identify two pairs and if they are equivalent in the above sense. Note that z, equipped with these operations of addition and multiplication, is a ring, and is in fact, the prototypical example of a ring. We can also define a total order on z by writing if and only if a plus db plus c. This will lead to an additive zero of the form, an additive inverse of the form, a multiplicative unit of the form, and a definition of subtraction minus equals. This construction is a special case of the Grothendieck construction. Uniqueness. The negative of a number is unique, as is shown by the following proof. Let x be a number and let y be its negative. Suppose y is another negative of x, by an axiom of the real number system, and so, x plus y equals x plus y. Using the law of cancellation for addition, it is seen that y equals y. Thus y is equal to any other negative of x. That is, y is the unique negative of x.